All right, gang tackling. All right, that'll be exciting. All right, so there's like me and one other person between you guys and cocktails, and so we're gonna go fast. Current slide, 1 of 42. Just kidding. All right, so I know I look like I'm about 25, but I'm actually much older. So I'm gonna tell you a little story. That's where I had my first job in tech. That's 512 2nd Street, which is like an amazing building in an amazing neighborhood, an amazing location. And I worked for this unbelievable company with a really, really cool logo. And they were like, when I started, there were like 30 of us, and we were in this like converted brick warehouse, and we were all working really hard, and we all like worked hard together, and we played hard together, and we were like killing it, man, like crushing it. It was awesome. And we talked on the Novell LAN, and it was pretty cool. So, you know, there are like hundreds or thousands of these stories in San Francisco. But this was 1991, and we sold software that like ran on these. Like we had a database field in our customer CRM thing. There was this crazy DOS thing that actually said, like, do we need to ship them 5 1/4 inch floppies or 3 1/2 inch floppies? Like we literally, my first job, I joke, was literally shipping software. It's awesome. So like when people say like, dude, we're like shipping, I'm like, uh-huh. Oh yeah, like you got those boxes with the binder and the manual. It's so good. So we had a lot of fun, and I was like really young and working in the marketing department and having a good time. And then they pointed at me and said, hey, we want you to be a product manager. And I was like, awesome. What am I going to product manage? And they said, well, we have these data products that we were selling portfolio management and trading systems for buy-side money management firms, which is like literally the dullest thing ever. It's when we had these, talk to a modem, and it would go out and get professional like pricing data, and it would download transactions from brokerage firms and allow people to like essentially like professional money managers keep track of money. And I was an English lit major. Like I had no idea what I was doing working there. But I had these unbelievable mentors who saw someone with like half a brain and who was motivated, and they said like, look, we want you to grow and we want you to have challenges and we want you in the company for a while, so we want to give you this really interesting job. And so I was responsible for these data products, and they used these modems, and they basically told me like, look, I have habits for you that we want you to instill, and the most important one that they taught me about was this: talk to at least one customer a day. My boss was like adamant about this. He's like, I want you on the phone with a customer at least once a day, talking to them about the products that you manage that they use. And I want you listening in on support calls for 2 hours a week. And I want you going on sales calls 2 or 3 times a month so that you can be out there like learning about how our customers are using your products. It's like, okay, so I started doing this. And over time, I started to hear this refrain from customers about this problem that they were having, which is like, hey, we got to download all these transactions from all these brokerage firms, and we got to reconcile them, and we have to tick and tie them at the end of every month. And literally, like, it is really as boring as it sounds, but it was a really big problem that people were having. And so, like, I had this idea. And this is an accurate representation of me at the age of 24 with an idea. I was like gung-ho, super excited. And so I was like, all right, I have this idea for a product. We're going to do transaction reconciliation. We're going to get all this information. We're going to make it really, really easy for people to do stuff. And I started to write because I thought that the job of a product manager was to actually write a market requirements document or an MRD. So you have to remember, like, this is 1993. There were no blogs. There was no medium.com with a whole bunch of product managers telling you how to do your job. There were not conferences like this where you could go to and like learn this stuff, at least not that I was aware of. My bosses were former Hewlett-Packard product managers, so they were like, hey, we got to write an MRD. So I was like really, really excited. I was an English lit major, so I'm like, I can write. Start writing. And I end up with something that looks like this. Huge, big document describing every single function and feature that the product should do. How it should work, how the transmission protocol is going to work, like how the transactions are going to get downloaded, like what it's going to do, what the UI is going to be, how people are going to tick and tie, blah, 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 all about the features of the product. So I take it to Stephanie, our CEO, and I'm really excited about the thud weight of my MRD, and I'm like, boom, drop it on her desk. I'm like, we're going to build this product. It's going to be awesome. and we're going to start selling razor blades for the razors. And she's like, okay. She kind of leafs through it, and she's like, all right, you need to go talk with Frank. I'm like, all right, who's Frank? So this is Frank. That's literally like, it's big up here. It's kind of nice. That's literally the biggest picture I could find of him on the internet. I did the whole Google search thing. It's the only one that's actually out there. This is Frank Robinson. Frank was a board member at Advent Software and basically said like, hey, look, tell me what you're trying to do. And so I said, hey, we're trying to go build this thing. We're going to do this. We're going to bring all these transactions in. We're going to do this. It's going to do this. We're going to have this UI. It's going to be super easy for users, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, okay, stop, rewind, tell me about the problem. And I'm like, what do you mean, the problem? And he's like, no, you have to tell me about the problem you're trying to solve. And so I described, like, no, I've been talking to customers like every day on the phone, and I've been listening in on support calls for 2 hours, and I've been going to, on sales calls, and like, this is what I'm hearing. And he's like, so I'm telling him this in broad brushstrokes, and he says like, okay, that's pretty good, but you don't really know what problem you're solving yet. And I was like, wait, what do you mean? He's like, you don't really understand the customer at all. I said, no, but I've been doing all this stuff. He's like, you don't really understand the customer, so I'm going to help you validate the market. And so I'm looking at him like, what? What do you mean validate the market? He's like, all right, here's what we're going to do. You're going to call 30 customers, and we're going to set up meetings, and we're going to go see them, and we're going to ask them about the problem, and we're going to talk to them about the problem, and we're going to describe what we are potentially building. And this is before you're going to write a line of code. We're going to go see 30 customers. And he said something to me like that stuck with me for the last 22 years. He said, if you can't get 30 meetings, you don't have a product. If you can't get 30 meetings, you don't have a product. So start smiling and dialing. So I smile and dial. And I call him up, and I'm like, hi, this is Michael Sippey. Remember me? I've been talking to you. And so this is easy because like, this is a product line extension. We have existing customers. I know which 30 customers to call. I just pick up the phone and I start calling them. Remember, I've been calling them all along. I think you have this problem. Do you have this problem? Yes, we sort of have this problem, kind of. Do you mind if we come in for like 45 minutes into your office and ask you about these, talk to you more about these problems? And so after about like 3 weeks of smiling and dialing, like I finally get like 30 meetings lined up. Calling after about 45 people, get 30 meetings lined up. And we get all this done, and Frank's like, great, we got our 30 meetings, and I'm glad you have that. We're bringing the whole team. It's like, oh, all right. What do you mean we're bringing the team? Well, it's not just you. You can't just do this on your own. You got to have your lead engineer, your lead QA person, your lead support person, and a salesperson with you. Because we're going to get in the van, and we're going to go do this. And so we got in the van. So Frank called this process essentially, like, now it's called customer development. At the time, he was writing a book about it called market validation. He never actually published the book. He instead turned it into a consulting company. But the shorthand within Advent was, we're going to go get in the van and essentially go out and actually look at customers face to face and ask them about their problems. So we set the meetings. We actually did rent a passenger van. I made slides. This was Harvard Graphics. Who has ever used Harvard Graphics? I'm the only one. Oh, it's like best thing ever. Those were not actually my slides. That again is like, thank you, Google Image Search. But we basically made slides, and it's a really, really simple deck. And I'm going to tell you 3 stories, this one and then 2 more, and basically I've used the same deck the whole time, which is you spend 5 minutes going around the room and being nice. You spend 30 minutes on the problem, right? We think you have this problem. Describe what you think the problem is. Do you have this problem? Yes? No? Maybe? How are you solving this problem today? How much are you spending to solve this problem? How does this problem impact your business? So I was doing this transaction reconciliation product that would do this electronically for the first time for any of these firms. So when we were asking, like, how do you solve these problems, we would actually ask them to go like, hey, bring in your people that do this work, and we want to see their actual process when they do it. And so they would actually bring in, we'd learn about this. We'd only spend like 10 minutes talking about, like, here's what we think our solution is going to be, because the focus is always on the problem. And then we'd ask for feedback. And the feedback is pretty simple, right? Base hit or home run, right? And we'd ask, like, put it in a baseball metaphor so you don't give them like a grade. And it also lets people be creative. Like, well, one time we had this person say, well, it was a single, but the pitcher is really slow to first, so you could probably steal second. Or it's a triple, or sometimes you're lucky and you say it's get a home run. You'll ask the easy question, which is, will you help us beta test it? People always say yes to that. How much are you willing to pay for it is essentially a game of chicken, because you ask it and you sit there. And it's a really uncomfortable silence, because people hate silence. Like this. And eventually someone will say, like, well, okay, we've got 2 FTEs doing that, and they cost this much, and they do that, and we probably don't want to do it on a license basis, probably do it on a monthly basis, and you basically start to unpack that. Then this question, which I talked about once, and Ken Norton wrote a great blog post about this, which is, like, if you had $100 of our development budget, how would you spend it? And this one is fun. They're like, wait a minute, this product only costs $100? And you're like, no. Imagine a pie, and it has $100 bills, and you're slicing the pie. How would you allocate our development resources? And they're like, wait, against all the features that we talked about? Like, sure, you can allocate amongst the features that we talked about for this product, or anything that we can deliver for you. And so sometimes we'd get the normal, like, well, 60% on this, 40% on that, or 60, 20, 20, or whatever it is. Sometimes we say, like, we had one customer say, like, well, I'd spend about $10 of your budget on this entire product that we talk about, and $90 of your budget fixing the bugs in your existing product, which is always fun. That's good. So then we get back in the van. And it's really important you get back in the van as a team. You don't want to leave anyone behind. But the real reason is that you want to score it, like, right away. So, and you do that, like, in the van with the laptop, and you actually score, and we'd score on, like, business sophistication, like how sophisticated were they technically, the top 3 problems that they identified that we can solve for them. Did we get on base? And would they beta test with us? What would they pay? And then, like, other people that we should go talk to and surprises and stuff like that. But basically, like, right after every meeting. And the key thing is that we did this as a team, right? So, like, we had that whole team, we get in the van, and we do this, and we did this 30 times. 30 times. So you start to see, you get much better at your pitch, and after, like, the first 5. After the first 10, you start to see patterns. After 20, you really understand, like, segmentation of the market. And after 30, you have a really good understanding of what it is that you actually need to go build. Because you really want the whole team to understand the kind of 3 core fundamental questions around building products. What problem are we solving? Who are we solving it for? And how are we going to measure success? So that product that we started to do validation on in 93, we shipped it in, like, 95, 96, is actually still operating, which is kind of cool 20 years later. And it became the core of kind of Advent's data services business. So fast forward 6 years, I'm at a .com internet consulting company called Viant. There was, like, Viant, Scient, US Web CKS. There were a bunch of these people. Instead of selling software, we were selling dreams. It was great. That is literally the biggest logo I can find. We went public. Like, there was a lot of stuff. And this is, like, you could find, like, one little logo from, like, Google image search of Viant now. So I'm there. I'm doing some strategy consulting. And in walks this crazy entrepreneur, Muli Cohen. Muli has an idea to put digital jukeboxes in bars and restaurants and to sell them directly to bar owners. I can say I actually think he is crazy. He's now in prison for tax fraud and evasion and all sorts of stuff related to this company, but not the point. This was his vision, which was a digital jukebox. You'd put your credit card in. And remember, this is like 99. This is before iTunes. This is before the iPod. This is like MP3s were still kind of a new thing. We were using Castanet, like the old Java stuff, to, like, do content syncing. It was nutso. Anyway, so we basically, he's like, hey, we're going to go sell this to bar owners directly, and they're going to be able to make more money from their jukeboxes, and it'll be easier for them because they're not going to have to buy CDs. They'll just, like, get MP3s from us. And we're like, okay, so what are we going to go do? Get in the van. Right. So we get in the van, And we go and we talk to these bar owners like, hey, we have this amazing product, but like, what problem do you have with your jukebox? Like, do we have a problem to solve here? And they're like, nope. We don't have a problem to solve. Like, you don't have a problem to solve for me. Because it turns out that like they liked the product idea, like they weren't the buyer. Because if you go to bars, like they're usually more than one coiner operated thing. There's like the jukebox, and there's the pool table, and maybe a couple of pinball machines and other games. And those are actually run by a distributor who's like a coin op distributor guy who like has the keys and comes and like takes the coins and essentially like splits revenue with the bar owner and sometimes fronts money to the bar owner for other things that we learned about but are outside of the scope of my presentation. So, but it basically came to like, hey, look, what we answered the questions like, what problem are we solving, who are we solving it for, how are we going to measure success? But we learned that we were completely wrong in the initial assumption about who our target customer was. And the only way we did that is because we got in a van and we went to bars, which was pretty great. So that product lasted until 2012, which is not bad. 13-year run for a digital jukebox company. The company really went under because Mooley's now in jail for tax evasion and money laundering and wire fraud. All right, so fast forward another 15 years. And so now it's 2015. And I'm fresh off of a year of underemployment, which is, if you ever have the opportunity to be underemployed, it's really great. And here I am again. This is now actually a more accurate representation of me with an idea. And so I'm like, all right, so what am I gonna do? I have this like great idea. I see this like white space in the market. I think I know who the target user is. I think I know the value proposition provides. Like, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna go get in the van. Actually, this time, like, now vans aren't cool anymore. Like, either take an Uber or, basically, I went and did 30 Google Hangouts. And I used the same deck, basically, that I made it. I didn't make it in Harvard Graphics this time. But I used the same basic outline, right? Which is, hi, I'm Michael Sippey. You may know me from the internet. I think you have this problem. Do you have this problem? How are you solving this problem today? And really, how much do you really care about it? Like, is this something that's really important to you? Because right now, these potential users, I'm not actually asking them to pay because it's the internet. So they just have to care and really want to use it. Here's how I'm thinking of solving that problem. And then feedback and next steps. Same feedback questions, like base hit or home run. Would you help me beta test this? I didn't ask them how much they'd be willing to pay. I definitely asked the allocation question, and I learned really, really interesting things that I won't share with you because it's boring. And I got like, who else should I talk to? And got like all this stuff. And essentially what I did with these Hangouts is I transcribed everything and typed like a madman. And some calls my co-founder was on and some he was not. But the core thing is like after every single call, I debrief with him and say like, this is what we learned. We learned this, I went through this, we went through this. These are the things that they care about. Because we need to really answer these fundamental questions for the product and for the business of what problem are we solving, who are we solving it for, and how are we going to measure success. So the TLDR, or like TL, like I was asleep and just waiting for a drink, is you just have to do the work, right? You have to get in the van, preferably as a team. You have to do the calls. You have to set up the meetings. You have to talk to 30 people, and you have to focus on the problem. We are in love with our solutions. We're in love with our products. That's not the point, right? The point is the problem that we're solving and understanding that in a really, really fundamental level. Because only then can you have a product that actually resonates with the market and a business that can scale beyond one individual feature. Thanks so much.